The rain had stopped 3 hours ago, but the puddles on Balagan Street still held the mirror of Lagos's evening sky. Ademola sat on the wooden bench outside Mama Ngozi's provision shop, his worn leather sandals barely holding together, watching the world pass him by with that same gentle smile everyone mistook for emptiness. "There goes the fool again," whispered Mrs. Adebayo to her daughter, adjusting the wrapper around her waist as they walked past. 35 years old, and still sitting on benches like a schoolboy. His mother must be turning in her grave. Ademola heard every word. He always did. But his smile never wavered, never hardened into the bitterness that such words should have planted. He simply nodded at them, a greeting they didn't return, and continued watching the Okada riders weave through traffic like metallic dancers in an endless performance. "Ade. Ade, my friend." Chief Okonkwo's voice boomed across the street. The big man was climbing out of his black SUV, his agbada flowing like royal curtains. "Still warming that bench, eh? When will you learn to make something of yourself?" The small crowd that had gathered around the chief's vehicle laughed. They always laughed. Ademola had become the neighborhood's favorite comedy show, the punchline that never got old. Even the children knew to point and giggle when he passed, trained by their parents' careless jokes at his expense. What they didn't know, what they couldn't see, was that Ademola's mind worked differently than theirs. Where they saw concrete and chaos, he saw patterns. Where they heard noise, he heard stories. Every conversation that happened within his earshot, every transaction at Mama Ngozi's shop, every complaint about the government, every dream shared over bottles of malt drink, Ademola absorbed it all like a sponge soaking up the ocean. "Leave the boy alone, Chief." Mama Ngozi called from inside her shop. She was one of the few who showed him kindness, though even she believed he was simple. "Ademola, come and help me arrange these bags of rice." He rose immediately, his tall frame unfolding with surprising grace. Inside the shop, Mama Ngozi watched him work with efficient precision, stacking the bags in perfect pyramids, organizing by weight and date without being told. It was strange, she often thought, how someone so slow could complete tasks so flawlessly. "Mama, the rice from your new supplier. The bags are lighter than they should be," Ademola said quietly, his voice soft like distant thunder. "They're cheating you by 2 kilograms per bag." Mama Ngozi paused, then laughed. "Ade, how would you know such a thing? You've never even bought rice from me." But something in his eyes made her check anyway. When she weighed the bags later that evening, after he'd left, she found he was exactly right. 2 kilograms short, every single bag. She stared at the scale for a long moment, a question forming in her mind that she wasn't quite ready to ask. That night, as Ademola walked back to his small room in the boys' quarters behind Mr. Ibrahim's compound, he passed a group of young men huddled under the streetlight. They were the area boys, the ones who collected protection money from shop owners and made life difficult for anyone who didn't pay. "See this one," their leader Razor called out, walking like he owns the street. "Oi, fool. Come here." Ademola stopped. He could have kept walking, they never actually heard him, finding him too pathetic to bother with seriously, but he stopped and turned toward them with that same peaceful smile. "We're planning something big," Razor said, emboldened by his friend's laughter. "We're going to show this neighborhood who really runs things. But a fool like you wouldn't understand politics and power, would you?" "I understand more than you think," Ademola replied simply. The words hung in the humid night air, strange and unexpected. For just a moment, something flickered across Razor's face, uncertainty, perhaps, or the shadow of recognition that he'd missed something important. But then his friends laughed, and the moment passed. Ademola continued home, where his single room held more than anyone suspected. The walls were covered with newspapers, carefully cut and arranged. Maps of Lagos adorned every available space, marked with symbols and notes that would have amazed anyone who took the time to look. Books, so many books, were stacked in precise towers from floor to ceiling. Political theory, economics, urban planning, history. Every night, while the neighborhood slept, Ademola studied. Every day, while they laughed, he listened and learned. He knew which council members were corrupt. He knew which businesses were fronts for money laundering. He knew where every naira in the local government budget went, documented through years of patient observation and piecing together overhead conversations. He knew that Chief Okonkwo, who called him a fool, had embezzled 17 million naira from the road construction project. He knew that the police commissioner's son sold drugs from the cyber cafe on Allen Avenue. He knew that Mrs. Adebayo's husband kept a second family in Surulere, funded by money stolen from his company. Ademola knew everything. And he had been waiting for the right moment. That moment was coming sooner than anyone expected. Because tomorrow, something would happen that would shake Ikeja to its core. Tomorrow, the announcement would be made. Tomorrow, the governor would name his successor, the man who would run in the upcoming election with the party's full backing. And Ademola had been preparing for this moment for 15 years. As he lay down on his thin mattress, staring at the ceiling where he'd mapped out his entire strategy in pencil marks only he could decode, Ademola allowed himself a small, different kind of smile. Not the vacant one he wore for the world, but something sharper, hungrier. The fool was about to make his move. And Lagos would never be the same. The morning started like any other. Mama Ngozi opened her shop at 6 o'clock sharp, sweeping the front pavement while her radio crackled with the news. Ademola sat on his bench, present as always, invisible as always. But then the announcement came. And in a surprising turn of events, Governor Adelik has named his successor for the upcoming gubernatorial race. Breaking with all expectations and party tradition, he has chosen someone completely outside the political establishment. The candidate's name is Ademola Taiwo, a resident of Ikeja. The broom fell from Mama Ngozi's hands. Across the street, Chief Okonkwo's malt bottle slipped from his grip, shattering on the concrete. Mrs. Adebayo stopped mid-sentence, her mouth hanging open in an expression that would have been comical under different circumstances. And Ademola simply stood up, brushed off his worn trousers, and began walking down Balogun Street with that same gentle smile. "It's not possible," Chief Okonkwo sputtered, his face darkening with confusion and rage. "There must be some mistake. The fool? Our fool." But the radio continued, and the governor's recorded voice filled the morning air. "I have watched Ademola Taiwo for 3 years, since the day my intelligence team brought him to my attention. This young man has documented every corrupt practice in this state with the precision of a surgeon and the patience of a saint. He has evidence that could dismantle criminal networks we've been fighting for decades. More importantly, he understands the people of Lagos because he has lived among them, truly among them, not in the isolation of privilege. He is exactly what the state needs." The neighborhood exploded into chaos. By noon, Balogun Street was packed with journalists, cameras, and bewildered residents. The national news vans arrived from Victoria Island, their crews setting up equipment while trying to get interviews with anyone who knew Ademola. "He sat on that bench for years," Mama Ngozi told a reporter, still in shock. "Just sat there, smiling. We all thought, we all believed that I was stupid," Ademola finished gently, appearing beside her with 2 police escorts and a woman in a sharp business suit who introduced herself as his campaign manager. Mama Ngozi couldn't meet his eyes. We didn't know. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me?" His voice held no accusation, only truth. "If I had told you 3 years ago that I was documenting corruption, that I was building a case file that would change Lagos, would you have believed me? Or would you have laughed louder?" The answer sat heavy in the air between them. Chief Okonkwo pushed through the crowd, his face glistening with sweat. "This is madness. Ademola, you can't be serious. You have no experience, no education. I have a master's degree in public administration from the University of Lagos and a bachelor's in political science," Ademola replied calmly. "I graduated top of both classes. I also have documentation of your embezzlement from the Ikeja Road project. 17 million naira, Chief. Would you like me to be more specific about where the money went?" The chief's face went from red to gray. He stumbled backward, and the crowd parted around him like water around stone. "But why?" Mrs. Adebayo's daughter asked, her young voice cutting through the adult tension. "Why did you let us treat you that way? Why did you pretend? Ademola knelt down to her level, his smile finally reaching his eyes. Because I needed to understand who you all really were. Not the faces you show to powerful people, but your true selves. A governor who hides in mansions can never know his people. But a fool on a bench? He sees everything. The girl stared at him, processing this, then asked, "Are you going to punish everyone who is mean to you?" "No, little one. I'm going to help them. That's what leaders do." By evening, Ademola's story had gone viral across Nigeria and beyond. Social media exploded with debates, memes, and think pieces. Hashtag the foolish governor was trending worldwide. International news outlets picked up the story. The man who pretended to be simple to fight corruption. But in a luxury apartment in Ikoyi, a very different conversation was taking place. Senator Bakare crushed his phone in his palm. He was the man who had expected to be the governor's successor, the man whose political machine controlled half of Lagos through fear and money. And now some nobody from Ikeja had stolen what was rightfully his. "Find everything," he told his chief of security, a former military officer known only as Cobra. "Everyone has secrets. Everyone has weaknesses. I don't care if this fool is a saint. Destroy him before the election. I don't care how you do it." Cobra nodded slowly. "It will be done, sir." Meanwhile, in his campaign office, formerly Mr. Ibrahim's parlor, hastily converted, Ademola sat with his new team. His campaign manager, Yatund, had worked for 3 governors and knew every trick in the political playbook. "They'll come after you hard," she warned. Senator Bakare doesn't lose gracefully. He has people everywhere, police, judiciary, media. We have 8 weeks until the election. That's not much time to build an organization from nothing. "We're not building from nothing," Ademola replied, opening a laptop that looked surprisingly sophisticated for someone who'd been sitting on benches. "We're building from everything. Look." On the screen, a network diagram appeared. It showed every community leader, every market woman association, every youth group, every religious organization in Lagos. Color-coded, cross-referenced, detailed notes on each one. "I've spent 15 years mapping social networks in the city," Ademola explained. "I know who people trust, who they listen to, who can mobilize neighborhoods. I don't need traditional political machinery. I have something better. I have the people's infrastructure." Yatund stared at the screen, then at Ademola, and for the first time in her career, she felt genuine hope. "You brilliant, crazy man. This might actually work." But outside, in the darkness, Cobra was already making his first moves. The war for Lagos had begun, and it would be fought not with ballots alone, but with secrets, lies, and the kind of power that destroyed lives. Ademola knew it was coming. He had always known. But he had one advantage. Everyone still thought he was just a fool who'd gotten lucky. They had no idea what he was truly capable of. The attack came on a Tuesday, swift and vicious as a Lagos thunderstorm. Ademola was addressing a crowd of market women in Oyingbo Market when his phone exploded with alerts. His campaign manager burst through the crowd, her face drained of color. "We need to leave. Now." Within minutes, every major newspaper and online platform in Nigeria was running the same headline: Gubernatorial candidate's dark secret, mental institution records revealed. The documents looked authentic, admission papers from a psychiatric hospital in Yaba, dated 10 years prior. Diagnosis: schizophrenia, delusional disorder, paranoid tendencies. Patient name: Ademola Taiwo. They were perfect forgeries. Senator Bakare's work, Yatund said grimly as they huddled in the campaign office. "He's trying to use your fool persona against you. If people think you're actually mentally ill, your entire narrative collapses." Ademola studied the forged documents on his laptop screen, his expression unreadable. Around him, his young campaign team was panicking. Phone calls were coming in from supporters, journalists, even the governor's office. Everyone wanted to know if the documents were real. "We need to respond immediately," insisted Tund, their media coordinator. "Hold a press conference, get your medical records, prove these are fake." "No," Ademola said quietly. The room fell silent. "No." Yatun stared at him. Ade, if we don't respond within hours, this story will define you. People already thought you were simple. Now they'll think you're actually dangerous. Ademola stood and walked to the window, looking out at Balagan Street where a crowd was already gathering. Some held signs supporting him. Others looked confused, uncertain. And a troubling few, were already holding signs demanding he withdraw from the race. Do you know why Senator Bakare made this move so early? Ademola asked, not turning around. Because he's afraid. He's trying to end the campaign before we gain momentum. But he made a mistake. What mistake? Tund asked. This is brilliant. It's using your own strategy against you. The mistake. Ademola turned to face them, and there was something new in his eyes, something hard and calculating that made even Yatun take a step back, is that he forgot I've been documenting everything about everyone for 15 years. Including him. He opened his laptop and pulled up a file marked Bakare_comprehensive. 3 weeks ago, Senator Bakare's convoy stopped at a warehouse in Apapa. He met with Victor Ease, known in underworld circles as the accountant. Victor has been laundering money for political figures across West Africa for 20 years. Ademola clicked to a series of photographs, time-stamped and geotagged. The meeting lasted 47 minutes. He clicked again. Bank transfer records appeared. Within hours of that meeting, 17 million naira moved through 6 shell companies, eventually ending up in an offshore account in Mauritius. That money was originally from the state's education fund, money meant for school renovations. Yatun's eyes widened. You have proof of this? I have proof of everything. But here's what we're going to do. Ademola closed the laptop. Nothing. Nothing. Tund nearly shouted. We let the mental illness story breathe. Let it spread. Let Senator Bakare think he's winning. Ademola's smile was different now, sharper, more dangerous. And tomorrow, at exactly 6 p.m., we're going to host the largest town hall meeting Lagos has ever seen. Victoria Island, the stadium. We'll address the forgeries, release my actual medical records, and then... He paused. We're going to reveal Senator Bakare's criminal network. Not all of it. Just enough to shake the city. That's incredibly risky, Yatun said, but there was admiration in her voice. If the media narrative runs too long, some supporters will leave permanently. Some will, Ademola agreed. But those who stay will be truly committed. And when they see what we reveal about Bakare, they'll become warriors for this cause, not just supporters. That night, while Lagos social media raged with debates about Ademola's mental health, he sat in his small room. He'd refused to move to the fancy apartment his team had secured and made phone calls. He called Mom Ngozi. I know you're confused. I know the news is saying terrible things. But will you come to the stadium tomorrow? Will you hear the truth? Her voice was small, uncertain. Ade, are you well? Are the documents real? Come tomorrow, Mama. And bring everyone from Balagan Street who'll listen. He called the market women from Oyingbo, the bus drivers from Ojota, the teachers from Surulere. One by one, hour after hour, personal phone calls. Not from a politician to constituents, but from a human being to other human beings. I'm asking you to trust me one more time, he said to each of them. I know I've already asked a lot, but tomorrow I'll show you everything. Meanwhile, in his Ikoyi mansion, Senator Bakare was celebrating. His intelligence told him that Ademola's campaign was in chaos, that supporters were abandoning him in droves, that even the governor was considering withdrawing his endorsement. The fool thought he could play in the big leagues. Bakare laughed, pouring expensive whiskey for his inner circle. By tomorrow, he'll be back on that bench where he belongs. But Cobra, standing in the shadows, wasn't smiling. He had watched Ademola for 3 days now, and something troubled him. The young man was too calm, too focused. He didn't move like someone whose world was collapsing. He moved like someone executing a plan. Sir, Cobra interrupted the celebration. I think we should prepare for... Prepare for what? Bakare waved him off. It's over. The fool is finished. Cobra said nothing more. But as he left the mansion, he made his own preparations. Tomorrow's town hall, he decided, would need special attention. Perhaps a disruption of some kind. Perhaps something more permanent. The war for Lagos was about to reach its climax, and someone had to lose. The question was, who had underestimated whom? The Victoria Island Stadium had never seen anything like it. By 4 p.m., 2 hours before the scheduled town hall, every seat was filled. Thousands more gathered outside, watching on large screens Ademola's team had hastily installed. The crowd was massive, diverse, and electric with tension. Some had come to support him. Many had come to hear him defend himself. And some, scattered throughout in clusters that Ademola's security team had already identified, had come to cause trouble. Ademola stood backstage, watching the crowd through a gap in the curtain. He wore a simple white kaftan, his only concession to the formality of the occasion. His hands were steady. The press is vicious out there, Yatund warned, scrolling through her tablet. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, everyone's covering this live. They're calling it the trial of the fool governor. Social media sentiment is running 65% against you. It was 70% this morning. Ademola replied calmly. We're moving in the right direction. At exactly 6 p.m., he walked onto the stage. The stadium erupted, some in cheers, more in boos and jeers. Signs waved throughout the crowd. Crazy Man Go Home competed with We Believe in AD. The noise was deafening, primordial. Ademola stood at the podium and waited. He didn't raise his hands for silence. He didn't speak into the microphone. He simply waited, his patient smile in place. Slowly, incredibly slowly, the stadium began to quiet. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was that same quality that had made people comfortable talking around him for 15 years, the sense that this man could absorb chaos without breaking. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but clear, amplified perfectly by the sound system. My name is Ademola Taiwo, and for 15 years, you called me a fool. The stadium held its breath. You were right to call me that, because only a fool would believe that one ordinary person could make a difference in a system so corrupt, so broken, that good people have given up hope. Only a fool would think that truth could defeat power, that patience could overcome greed. He paused. Only a fool would love Lagos enough to sacrifice 15 years of his life gathering evidence against those who steal from you, who lie to you, who treat your children's future as their personal bank account. On the giant screens flanking the stage, images began to appear. Ademola as a young man, graduating from university with honors. His thesis on anti-corruption mechanisms. His master's degree certificate. His medical records, clean, comprehensive, proving beyond doubt that the psychiatric admission was a forgery. The documents released yesterday were fake. Ademola continued. Senator Bakare created them to destroy my campaign because he knows what I'm about to show you. The screen changed. Photographs of Senator Bakare's meeting with Victor E's. Bank records. Money trails. Then more. Contracts awarded to fake companies, bribes paid to journalists, threats made to rivals. 15 years of meticulous documentation presented with devastating clarity. But Ademola didn't stop there. Senator Bakare is not alone. He's part of a network. More images. More names. Police commissioners. Judges. Business tycoons. Media owners. A web of corruption so extensive that the crowd gasped, then fell into stunned silence. And then Ademola did something unexpected. Chief Okonkwo, he called out. Are you here? In the third section, Chief Okonkwo stood reluctantly, his face ashen. Thousands of eyes turned toward him. I have evidence of your crimes too, Chief. 17 million naira. The Ikeja Road project. I documented every false invoice, every bribe. Ademola's voice remained gentle. But I'm not going to prosecute you. The stadium erupted in confusion. Yatund looked panicked backstage. This wasn't in the script. I'm not going to prosecute you, Ademola repeated, because I believe in redemption more than revenge. Return the money. All of it. Work with my administration to fix the roads properly. Use your connections and your skills, and Chief, you have many skills to help Lagos instead of rob it. Do this, and we move forward together. Chief Okonkwo sank back into his seat, his face in his hands. "This offer extends to everyone here," Ademola said, addressing the entire stadium now. "Everyone who has taken small bribes, who has looked the other way, who has participated in the system because they felt they had no choice. I'm not interested in punishing Nigeria. I'm interested in healing it." On the screens, the images changed again. This time, they showed something different: Ademola's detailed plans for Lagos. Infrastructure projects mapped out street by street, education reforms, healthcare initiatives, economic development zones. Every plan was specific, costed, sourced. "I spent 15 years learning this city," Ademola said. "Not from government offices or luxury cars, but from benches and markets and streets. I know where every pothole is. I know which schools have no teachers. I know which hospitals have no medicine. And I know how to fix all of it, because I've been preparing for this moment since I was 20 years old." The crowd was shifting. People who had come to jeer were listening. The boos had faded to murmurs, the murmurs to whispers, the whispers to silence. "You called me a fool," Ademola said, his voice finally rising with emotion. "And maybe I am. Maybe only a fool would believe that we can build a Lagos where children don't die from preventable diseases, where teachers are paid enough to feed their families, where young people have opportunities beyond area boy gangs and Yahoo Yahoo. Maybe only a fool would think that Nigerians deserve leaders who serve instead of steal." He leaned into the microphone, his eyes scanning the massive crowd. "But if that makes me a fool, then I am proud to be one. And I'm asking you to be fools with me, to believe again, to fight again, to build the Lagos we all deserve." The stadium exploded. This time, the roar was different. It started in pockets: Mama Ngozi and the women from Balogun Street, the market women from Oyingbo, students from Unilag, and then it spread like wildfire. People were crying, shouting, waving their signs with renewed fervor. "Ade! Ade! Ade!" But in the VIP section, Cobra was moving. He had seen enough. His team of 6 men, planted throughout the stadium, were receiving their signal. The disruption was about to begin. Smoke bombs, planted evidence of firearms to trigger a security stampede, chaos that would end with Ademola's accidental death in the confusion. Except Ademola's security team had been watching Cobra's team all evening. As Cobra reached for his phone to send the final signal, he found himself suddenly surrounded by police officers, not the corrupt ones on Senator Bakir's payroll, but a special unit answering directly to the governor. "Your services are no longer required," the commander said quietly, snapping handcuffs onto Cobra's wrists. On stage, Ademola saw the arrest happening. For just a moment, his mask slipped, and the crowd saw something flash across his face. Not fear, but cold determination. He had known. Of course he had known. "One more thing," Ademola said into the microphone. "Senator Bakir sent men here tonight to kill me." The stadium gasped. "I'm telling you this not to scare you, but to show you what we're up against. Power doesn't surrender easily. Corruption fights back. The road ahead will be dangerous." He paused. "But it will also be worth it. Because we're not just fighting for a governorship. We're fighting for the soul of Lagos. The soul of Nigeria." The speech lasted another 20 minutes, but the outcome was already decided. By the time Ademola left the stage, social media sentiment had flipped completely. #FoolishAndProud was trending worldwide. International media was calling it the most extraordinary political moment in modern African history. But the real change happened in smaller ways. Chief Okonkwo, sitting in his car outside the stadium, called his banker. "I want to return some money," he said quietly. "All of it." Mrs. Adebayo, watching from her living room, looked at her daughter. "I was wrong about him," she whispered. "We were all wrong." And across Lagos, in 1,000 small rooms and compounds, people who had given up on politics, who had sworn never to vote again, who had accepted corruption as unchangeable, those people began to hope. Senator Bakir, watching the broadcast from his mansion, threw his whiskey glass at the television screen. But even as it shattered, he knew he had lost. The fool had beaten him with the one weapon he couldn't fight: truth. The election was still 6 weeks away. There would be more attacks, more challenges, more attempts to destroy what Ademola was building. But tonight, in the Victoria Island Stadium, something had shifted in Lagos's heart. The fool had become a leader, and the city would never be the same. As Ademola finally returned to Balogun Street late that night, exhausted but peaceful, he found Mama Ngozi waiting by his door. "You're not staying in that fancy campaign apartment?" she asked. "This is my home, Mama." She handed him a plate of jollof rice and chicken, still warm. "I'm sorry, Ade. For every unkind word, every laugh. I'm so sorry." He took the plate, and his smile, that gentle smile everyone had mistaken for stupidity, finally showed its true nature, forgiveness. "You helped me when others wouldn't, Mama. You gave me work. You treated me with basic human kindness. That's more than most did." He balanced the plate carefully. "And tomorrow, when we continue this fight, I'll need that kindness again. From you, from everyone. Can I count on you?" Mama Ngozi wiped her eyes and nodded. "Until the end, my governor. Until the end." The story of the fool who became governor wasn't over. It was just beginning. But on this night, in this moment, Ademola Taiwo allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, fools really could change the world. If they were patient enough, smart enough, and most importantly, if they loved their people enough to endure 15 years of mockery to save them. Lagos was about to find out what kind of governor a fool could be. And the answer would surprise everyone.